Okay, let's be honest. When Portal first came out, nobody knew what the hell they were getting into. You boot up this weird little puzzle game bundled with Half-Life 2, and suddenly you're holding a gun that shoots holes in walls? What kind of fever dream is this? But then something magical happens. You fire that first portal, walk through it, and your brain just melts. It's like that moment when you first understood how mirrors work, except 1,000 times cooler. The genius isn't just the portal mechanic though, it's GLaDOS, this passive-aggressive AI who's simultaneously your teacher, tormentor, and comedian. She'll congratulate you for solving a puzzle, while casually mentioning how you're probably going to die horribly. The whole game is basically one big physics experiment wrapped in dark humor, and by the end, when you're flinging yourself across massive chambers like some kind of interdimensional acrobat, you realize Valve didn't just make a puzzle game, they rewired your brain. Portal proved that innovation doesn't need explosions or epic storylines. Sometimes all you need is a really, really good idea and the balls to see it through. Time manipulation in games isn't new, right? We've had rewind buttons and slow-mo effects forever, but then Jonathan Blow comes along with Braid and says, "Hold my artisanal coffee," and completely obliterates everything we thought we knew about time mechanics. This isn't just pressing a button to undo your mistakes. This is poetry written in code. Each world introduces a new time mechanic that makes your brain work overtime. Objects that are immune to rewind, time flowing differently in various parts of the screen, shadows that show your previous timeline. It's like someone took a philosophy textbook and turned it into a platformer. And don't even get me started on the story. On the surface, it's about a guy looking for a princess, but peel back the layers and you're diving into themes of regret, the atomic bomb, and the nature of relationships. The final level is pure genius. You think you're the hero saving the princess, but when you play it backward, you realize you might be the monster she's running from. Braid doesn't just break the mold, it melts it down and forges something entirely new. Before Dark Souls, dying in a video game was basically a timeout. A little embarrassing slap on the wrist before you respawn and try again. Then From Software shows up and says, "What if dying was the actual point?" Suddenly, death becomes your teacher, your motivator, and occasionally, your nemesis. Every enemy placement feels deliberate, every trap perfectly positioned to catch you off guard just when you're feeling confident. But here's the thing, Dark Souls isn't hard just to be cruel. It's hard because it respects you enough to believe you can learn from failure. When you finally beat that boss that's been destroying you for hours, the satisfaction is unlike anything else in gaming. It's pure, concentrated triumph injected directly into your veins. The game also revolutionized online integration without breaking immersion. Those cryptic messages scrawled on the ground, the ghostly phantoms showing other players' deaths, it creates this sense of shared struggle across the internet. Dark Souls spawned an entire genre because it understood something fundamental. Games don't need to hold your hand. Sometimes the best teacher is adversity, and the sweetest victory comes after the most bitter defeats. Most multiplayer games are about competition, trash talk, and proving you're better than everyone else. Journey looks at that whole concept and whispers, "What if we just didn't?" Instead, it creates something almost impossibly beautiful, anonymous cooperation. You're exploring these vast, mysterious landscapes, and suddenly, another traveler appears. No usernames, no voice chat, no way to even know if they're a 12-year-old kid or a grandmother from halfway around the world. All you can do is chirp at each other like some kind of elegant bird language and work together toward this distant mountain. The genius is in what's stripped away. Without the ability to be toxic or competitive, players naturally become helpful and kind. I've seen people wait at the end of levels for slower companions, share power-ups without being asked, and even perform little dances of celebration together. It's like the game found the best part of human nature and amplified it. The emotional arc is perfect too. You start alone and vulnerable, build this wordless friendship, face challenges together, and by the end, that final climb feels like the most important thing you've ever done in a game. Journey proved that online gaming could be about connection, not just competition. What happens when a game becomes self-aware and starts making fun of you for playing it? The Stanley Parable. That's what happens. This is interactive fiction that constantly breaks its own rules and messes with your head in the best possible way. You play as Stanley, but you're really playing as yourself, being guided by a narrator who may or may not have your best interests at heart. The brilliant part is how it weaponizes choice against you. Every time you think you're being clever by doing the opposite of what the narrator suggests, the game just smirks and says, "Yeah, we planned for that too." It's like being in an argument with the smartest person you know, except they wrote all your comebacks in advance. The game has multiple endings, but none of them feel like winning in the traditional sense. Instead, each playthrough feels like a philosophical discussion about free will, game design, and the nature of storytelling itself. Some paths lead to the narrator having a complete breakdown, others to surreal comedy bits that make no sense but somehow feel profound. The Stanley Parable doesn't just break the fourth wall, it demolishes it with a wrecking ball, and then asks if you enjoyed the show. Most RPGs teach you that violence is the solution to every problem. See a monster? Kill it. Boss in your way? Murder time. Undertale shows up and asks, but what if you didn't? At first glance, it looks like any other indie RPG. Pixel graphics, chiptune music, quirky characters. But then you realize every single enemy can be spared, and suddenly you're having conversations with a depressed ghost, flirting with a skeleton, and trying to comfort a flower that's having an existential crisis. The combat system is pure genius. Instead of just selecting attack, you're playing bullet hell minigames that reflect each character's personality. Fighting a dog? The bullets are bones and sticks. Battling a robot? Disco lights and dance moves. But here's where Undertale gets really sneaky. It remembers everything. Kill someone on your first playthrough, then start over and try to be nice. Characters will remember what you did. The game basically becomes your conscience, and by the end, you're questioning every violent choice you've ever made in any video game ever. Toby Fox created something that feels like it was made specifically for you, with humor that hits different for everyone, and emotional moments that come out of nowhere and wreck you completely. Forget everything you know about how video games work. Her Story hands you a computer terminal from the 90 seconds with a database of police interview clips and says figure it out. That's it. No quest markers, no tutorials, no hand-holding whatsoever. You're basically a detective with nothing but a search function and your own curiosity. The genius is in how it mirrors real investigation work. You hear a woman mention something in one clip, so you search for that key word and find more pieces of the puzzle. Slowly, this incredibly complex story starts emerging about a missing person case that goes way deeper than you initially thought. But here's the kicker. Everyone experiences the story differently. The clips you find first shape how you interpret everything else. Two players can walk away with completely different theories about what happened, and both could be right. It's like that movie Rashomon, except you're actively constructing the narrative yourself. The actress Viva Seifert delivers this incredible performance across hundreds of short clips, and you start to notice tiny details in her expressions and word choices that reveal so much more than the surface dialogue. Her Story proved that sometimes the best gameplay mechanic is just human curiosity unleashed. Nintendo looked at 30 years of Zelda formula and said, what if we threw all of this in the garbage? No more linear progression. No more, you need this item to access that area. No more following a predetermined path. Instead, they dropped Link into this massive world and whispered, go anywhere, do anything, break everything. And boy, did we break things. The physics engine became everyone's favorite toy. We're launching ourselves across the map with bombs, creating flying machines out of logs and balloons, and using metal objects to conduct electricity in ways that would make Tesla jealous. But the real revolution is in the exploration. See that mountain in the distance? You can climb it. See that interesting rock formation? There's probably a puzzle there. Every inch of Hyrule feels handcrafted, with little environmental stories and secrets tucked into every corner. The game respects your intelligence and creativity in ways that feel almost revolutionary. Instead of telling you, no, you can't do that, it usually says, sure, but you might die horribly, and it'll probably be hilarious. It's like Nintendo remembered that the best part of video games is the feeling of discovery, then built an entire world around that single emotion. Lucas Pope looked at modern gaming graphics and said, what if we went backwards but made it absolutely stunning? The result is Return of the Obra Dinn, a game that looks like it was drawn with a 1-bit pen, but somehow creates the most atmospheric detective experience ever made. You're an insurance investigator, UK Mall NDU. Already the coolest job description in gaming history, armed with a magical pocket watch that shows you the moment of each person's death on this cursed ship. The art style isn't just stylistic choice, it's narrative genius. The stark black and white imagery makes every scene feel like a haunting woodcut illustration, and somehow this limitation makes everything more memorable, not less. But the real magic is in the deduction. The game gives you 60 people and 60 fates to figure out with minimal hand-holding. You're matching faces to names, determining causes of death, and piecing together this incredible maritime mystery using nothing but context clues and your own brain power. When you finally identify someone correctly after staring at their pixelated face for 20 minutes, it feels like you've just solved a real murder case. Pope created something that feels like playing detective in a Edgar Allan Poe story, and somehow made insurance investigation feel like the most exciting job in the world. Hideo Kojima got fired from Konami, started his own studio, and decided to make a game about walking. And somehow, impossibly, it works. Death Stranding takes the most mundane activity imaginable and turns it into this meditative, almost spiritual experience. You're Sam Porter Bridges, yes, that's actually his name, delivering packages across a post-apocalyptic America, and every step feels meaningful. The genius is in how the game makes you think about every movement. Do you take the long, safe route around the mountain or risk the treacherous shortcut? How much weight can you carry before you start stumbling? Should you build a bridge here to help future players? Because yes, this is a multiplayer game disguised as a single-player experience. Other players' constructions appear in your world. Ladders, bridges, charging stations, creating this incredible sense of asynchronous cooperation. You're all working together to rebuild America, one package delivery at a time. The story goes completely off the rails in typical Kojima fashion, with reality-bending concepts and philosophical monologues about connection and isolation. But underneath all the weirdness is this beautiful metaphor about how we're all just trying to help each other carry our burdens through life. Forget everything you know about RPG combat, because Disco Elysium said, what if the real battle was with your own terrible life choices? This is a detective story where your biggest enemy isn't some ancient evil, it's your own alcoholic amnesiac brain having philosophical arguments with itself. Your skills are literally voiced characters in your head. Your necktie gives you advice. Your stomach has opinions about political theory. It sounds insane because it absolutely is, and that's what makes it brilliant. You wake up in a trashed hotel room with no memory, no badge, and apparently a reputation for being the worst cop in the precinct. But instead of just solving the murder case, you're reconstructing your entire personality through dialogue choices. Want to be a fascist? The game will let you, then show you exactly how pathetic that makes you. Want to be a communist? Sure, but prepare for some uncomfortable truths about idealism versus reality. The writing is absolutely gorgeous, like someone took Raymond Chandler, gave him a philosophy degree, and let him loose in Eastern Europe. Every conversation feels like it matters. Every choice shapes not just the story, but who you are as a person. By the end, you realize the real mystery wasn't who killed the hanged man, it was figuring out who the hell you used to be and who you want to become. Time loops in games usually feel like punishment. You messed up, so do it again. Outer Wilds takes that concept and turns it into pure exploration magic. Every 22 minutes, the sun goes supernova and resets everything, but you retain your knowledge. It's like Groundhog Day met No Man's Sky and had the most beautiful cosmic baby imaginable. The genius is that you're not trying to prevent the time loop, you're using it to explore this handcrafted solar system where every planet feels alive and meaningful. There's the planet with shifting sand that reveals ancient ruins, The water world with tornadoes that launch you into space, the quantum moon that exists in multiple places simultaneously and makes your brain hurt in the best way. But the real magic happens when the pieces start connecting. You'll find a piece of text on one planet that suddenly makes sense of a puzzle you saw 3 loops ago on a completely different world. The Nomai, this ancient alien race, left behind this incredible mystery that spans the entire solar system, and unraveling their story feels like archaeology mixed with astrophysics. When you finally understand what happened to them, and why the time loop exists, it's this perfect moment of cosmic horror and cosmic wonder rolled into one. Outer Wilds doesn't just break the mold, it launches the mold into a black hole and makes you question your place in the universe. What happens when you take a breakup album and turn it into a video game? You get Sayonara Wild Hearts, which is basically what would happen if Tron had feelings and really good taste in music. This isn't just a rhythm game, it's a full-blown pop opera about heartbreak, self-discovery, and cosmic motorcycle battles against literal manifestations of tarot cards. The whole thing unfolds like a fever dream, directed by someone who grew up on anime and arcade games. You're riding motorcycles through neon cityscapes, skateboarding on highways in the sky, and having dance battles with personas that represent different aspects of toxic relationships. Every level feels like a music video that you're actively participating in, with the gameplay perfectly synchronized to this incredible synth-pop soundtrack. But underneath all the style and spectacle is this surprisingly touching story about a woman whose heart gets broken so badly that reality itself starts glitching out. The game becomes this journey of putting yourself back together, one perfectly choreographed sequence at a time. It's only about an hour long, but it feels like you've lived through an entire emotional season. Sayonara Wild Hearts proved that games can be pure artistic expression. Not everything needs to be about winning or losing. Sometimes you just need to feel something beautiful and sad and hopeful all at the same time. Supergiant Games looked at the roguelike genre and asked, what if dying wasn't just mechanical failure, but actual character development? Enter Hades, where every death is a family dinner from hell, literally. You play as Zagreus, teenage son of Hades, trying to escape the underworld to find his mother, and every time you die, you just end up back home having awkward conversations with your dad about your rebellious phase. The genius is how death becomes narrative progression. Each run teaches you more about this dysfunctional divine family through fully voiced dialogue that somehow never repeats. Your relationships with other characters evolve based on your performance, your failures, your gifts, and your choices. Even the romance options, yes, you can date in hell, develop over dozens of runs. But the gameplay is absolutely sublime too. The combat feels weighty and satisfying, with weapon combinations that keep every run feeling fresh. Getting power-ups from your Olympian relatives, each with their own personality and grudges, turns every room into a potential family therapy session with more explosions. The art style is gorgeous, the voice acting is phenomenal, and somehow Supergiant managed to make a story about family trauma into one of the most addictive games ever made. Hades proved that roguelikes don't have to sacrifice story for replayability. They can actually enhance each other. Arcane Studios took one look at time loops and said, what if we made this incredibly complicated and also someone was actively trying to murder you? Deathloop drops you into this 70-second spy thriller aesthetic where you're trapped, reliving the same day on an island full of people who really, really want you dead. But here's the twist. There's another player, Juliana, whose entire job is to hunt you down and ruin your day. It's like hide and seek crossed with Groundhog Day, except everyone has guns and questionable fashion sense. The puzzle isn't just figuring out how to break the loop, it's doing it while someone who knows all your tricks is actively sabotaging you. Every run becomes this elaborate heist where you're trying to eliminate 8 targets in one perfect day, but Juliana might pop up at any moment to turn your careful plans into absolute chaos. The game gives you all these tools, teleportation, time manipulation, hacking abilities, but Juliana has the same toolkit, plus human unpredictability. When you're playing as Juliana invading someone else's game, it becomes this incredible cat and mouse psychological warfare. You're not just another AI enemy, You're a human intelligence, dedicated to making another person's life miserable in the most creative way possible. Deathloop made griefing feel like an art form, and somehow made being hunted by another player feel like the most natural thing in the world. Daniel Mullins looked at card games and said, "What if this was also a horror movie, an ARG, and an existential nightmare about game development?" Inscryption starts as this atmospheric card battler where you're trapped in a cabin with a creepy dealer who speaks in riddles and seems way too interested in your eyeballs. The cards have little faces and make tiny sounds when you play them, which should be cute but somehow feels deeply unsettling. You're thinking, okay, this is Slay the Spire meets Escape Room. And then the game just completely loses its mind. I can't spoil what happens, but let's just say that what you think is the game is actually just the first layer of something much deeper and stranger. The cabin setup gets completely shattered, and suddenly you're dealing with glitched out game worlds, corporate conspiracies, and characters who are aware they're in a video game and are absolutely not happy about it. The genius is how each section uses completely different gameplay mechanics. You go from card battles to pixel art adventures to 3D exploration, and somehow it all feels like one coherent nightmare. It's like the game is actively trying to escape from itself, breaking through different genres and art styles like a digital parasite. By the end, you're questioning whether you should have ever started playing at all, which is exactly the point. Luis Antonio had this wild idea. What if we took a time loop, stuck it in one apartment, and made it a marriage counseling session from hell? 12 minutes traps you in this top-down apartment where your romantic evening with your wife gets interrupted by a cop who claims she's murdered someone. Then you die, wake up, and it starts again. And again. And again. The apartment becomes this perfectly constructed puzzle box where every object, every conversation, every timing choice matters. You start thinking you're in a simple thriller, learn information in one loop, use it in the next, gradually piece together the truth. But the deeper you dig, the more disturbing everything becomes. The voice acting from James McAvoy, Daisy Ridley, and Willem Dafoe is incredible, but it's the silences that really get to you. Those moments when you know something terrible is about to happen, but you have to let it play out because you need that one piece of information. The game becomes this exercise in controlled helplessness. You know every beat of the conversation. You know exactly when the door will be knocked on, but you can't prevent the horror, only redirect it. When the truth finally comes out, it recontextualizes every single loop you've experienced. 12 minutes prove that sometimes the most effective horror happens in the most mundane settings. Housemarque took bullet hell shooters and roguelikes and asked, what if we made this about trauma and wrapped it in cosmic horror? Returnal drops you on this alien planet as Celine, an astronaut caught in a death loop, but every time you die, the planet reshapes itself like it's actively trying to drive you insane. The environments are absolutely gorgeous and terrifying. Ancient ruins that pulse with organic life, forests that feel like they're breathing, technology that looks both futuristic and archaeological. But the real genius is how the roguelike mechanics serve the narrative. Celine's fragmented memories and deteriorating mental state mirror perfectly with how roguelikes work. You retain some knowledge but lose your progress, everything familiar becomes slightly different, and you're never quite sure what's real anymore. The audio design is incredible. You're wearing 3D audio headphones that make every alien sound feel like it's coming from inside your skull. Combat is this perfect dance of dodging bullet patterns while maintaining aggression, and when you hit that flow state, it feels like you're channeling pure adrenaline directly into your nervous system. The story unfolds through these haunting audio logs and environmental storytelling, slowly revealing this incredibly dark tale about motherhood, guilt, and the cycles we trap ourselves in. Returnal made psychological horror and arcade shooting feel like natural bedfellows. Greg Lobanov created something that looks like a children's coloring book, but hits like a therapy session about imposter syndrome and creative burnout. You play as Chicory's #1 fan who suddenly inherits the magic paintbrush that brings color to the world, except you have absolutely no idea what you're doing, and everyone expects you to be as talented as your hero. The genius is that the entire game world is your canvas. Literally everything can be painted: trees, houses, characters, backgrounds. The whole world becomes this collaborative art project between you and the game. But underneath the cheerful art style is this surprisingly mature story about depression, creative anxiety, and what happens when your heroes turn out to be just as messed up as you are. Chicory herself is dealing with burnout and self-doubt, and watching this character you idolized struggle with the same fears you have is both heartbreaking and incredibly validating. The painting mechanic isn't just decoration, it becomes this metaphor for how we express ourselves and leave our mark on the world. Some players create elaborate masterpieces, others just scribble wildly, and the game loves all of it equally. By the end, you realize the story isn't about becoming a great artist, it's about finding your own voice and learning that creativity isn't about perfection, it's about expression. Blue 12 Studio had the audacious idea to make a game where you play as a cat, and somehow turned it into one of the most emotionally devastating experiences in recent memory. You're not an anthropomorphic cartoon cat, you're just a regular orange tabby who gets separated from your family and falls into this underground cyberpunk city populated by robots. The movement feels perfectly cat-like. You can only jump to specific ledges. You knock things off tables, because of course you do, and you can meow on command, which serves no gameplay purpose but brings infinite joy. But the real magic is in how the robots react to you. They've never seen a living creature before, and their wonder and gentle curiosity about this small furry being creates these incredibly touching moments. You become their connection to the natural world they've only heard about in stories. The city itself tells this beautiful story about artificial beings who've developed culture, art, and community long after their creators disappeared. They have their own problems, dreams, and relationships, and you're just this little catalyst wandering through their lives. The game never explains why you can operate computers or solve puzzles. You're a cat. Cats do what they want. Stray proved that sometimes the most profound stories come from the simplest premises, and that empathy doesn't require complex dialogue trees when you can just curl up in someone's lap.